well, and even pedestrians having to bear the biggest brunt of it all. But that will be in our second hour. But in this first hour, a lot is happening in the political sphere and in the social cycles as well. 12 counties have actually threatened to down tools, that is the health workers, if they are not paid by tomorrow. That is the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union said that their workers will down their tools beginning tomorrow if counties will not have paid. I hear that Kisii was able to pay yesterday and Kisumu has already talked to their medics, but it's a dire situation, and especially if we talk about a mass action and if we talk about an industrial action at this moment. That is not the only thing that is happening in the country. Of course, there's some good news. The government yesterday did announce that the cost of unga will be coming down, and this is one of the issues that the Azimio Brigade have brought on the table in regards to the bipartisan talks that was agreed upon by the head of state and Azimio leader. We will be talking about how that matrix changes, since Azimio want an expanded discussion, but the government says, let's look at electoral matters and let's do everything via parliament. Well, a lot is happening, but allow me to also rope in my panel of experts. You will bear me witness that also in the country, all the agendas, the Kenya Kwanza, since they took over office, they have said that they're going to do a lot of issues, and especially when it comes to things that touch the mwananchi. How is the industrialization sphere in the country? Well, joining me on set, we have Honorable PS Dr. Juma Mukhwana. Dr. Juma is the PS for industrialization. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you.
Just next to him is another doctor, is Dr. Isaack Hassan, who is a public policy analyst. Thank you indeed so much, gentlemen, for making time for us. And maybe to start with you, PS, the government did announce that we have a lot of pressure in the country, and the taxes, the cost of living is a little bit high for Kenyans, and Kenyans, as we had talked about earlier on, Kenyans are quite tired. But yesterday we had a relief that the government is gearing towards a reduction of the cost of unga. This is something that is going to be quite welcome in the country. I would like you to touch on that.
Thank you, thank you. Maybe just to talk about pressure, the pressure we are experiencing is not a Kenyan pressure. It's actually a global pressure. And if you look at it, I have seen people saying, oh, this government is taxing people. And I looked at the last figures. The budget we are implementing today doesn't belong to the government of President William Ruto. We are implementing a budget that was done by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. And the targets that we have in terms of tax collection were not set by this government. They were set by the other government. And I think I saw 2 days ago, like the collection was falling short by 600 billion. And so the impression you get is, oh, you are being taxed, overtaxed. If the targets were set by somebody else and the collection is falling short, how do we get this narrative that somebody is being overtaxed? Because if you are being overtaxed, we should have overshot our targets. So I think that, and then if you look at, for example, the cost of food, and I come from Western Kenya, where we grow a lot of maize. There are two attributes to the cost of living: food and, of course, fuel, because fuel affects manufacturing, transport, everything else. Since this government took over in August, we didn't have any rain. The short rains failed. This is the first rain we are having. So honestly speaking, without sounding paranoid, how do you expect to bring down the cost of food if you have not produced food? And you can import, but that is a drop in the ocean. So the real opportunity we have since this government took over is the rain we are having now. And everybody knows, even those who are asking for the cost of living, they know that without rain, because our agriculture is 99.9% rain-fed. So if there's no rain, we can't talk about bring down the cost of food. And so with the rains that you have now, I'm sure if you now travel along Nairobi-Nyeri Road, the cost of Sukuma wiki now is down for sure. And even with ugali, I mean, if you give it another 2 months, other things will get ready, some beans, some soya, something. So really, that's how you bring down the cost of living. And of course, for fuel, you know that the government has entered into a government-to-government agreement with UAE and others, and the fuel has already landed. So it's just a question of time. So I see that the conversation is not sincere, because if we really live in this country, you can't talk of bring down the cost of food when there's no rain. I mean, which miracle are you supposed to? I mean, unless you are Jesus Christ, who is going to turn stones into bread, I don't see that happening. But now with these rains, we really have an opportunity. And what we have told the farmers is, let's take advantage of this rain.
From your perspective, there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Not just light, a lot of light. With this rain, you give it 2 months, there will be no cost of living, because the cost of living is fuel and food. If you sort the food and you sort the fuel, because fuel affects everybody and everything that we do, really, I'm not saying that Kenyans will get to a point where they feel like this is where we should be, but compared to what has been happening, we will be doing a lot better. We'll have at least food, and if we bring down the cost of fuel, the industry, travel, manufacturing, everything will come down, and I see that happening. Maybe I'm not up to the point where everybody will be comfortable, but I think it will be a lot more. But I also want to say that what is happening here is really not unique for Kenya. It's a global phenomenon, and we all know that.
And of course, I'm quite sure a lot of Kenyans would want to know exactly what you are doing in your ministry when it comes to industrialization. Where are we despite the many challenges vis-a-vis also the Kenya Kwanza promises? But Daktari, also the cost of unga as announced by the government, and even I saw on television yesterday one of the supermarket chains had actually talked about, yes indeed, we are selling it at about 157 shillings. This is something that will be quite a relief for Kenyans, if you ask me. And being a relief, let's also look at the counties, the doctors themselves, the medics, the nurses, they haven't been paid. And I remember yesterday, the deputy chair of the health committee said that we're talking about 12 counties. There are other counties who have already paid their medics. So the county governments should prioritize salaries as one of the ways to avert such a strike. I would like you to touch on those two things.
Right, thank you very much. First and foremost, pleasure meeting you, PS.
Thank you.
I think you have started it very well in terms of the cost of living and what the government has on their table, which is a very good thing. In terms of cost of living, in order for a government to ensure that the country or the population in their country lives a decent life, they must have a long-term plan in terms of food security. Kenya is not a poor country. Kenya has a lot of resources. However, Kenya has switched its focus on importation than actually local product. And now that our PS is here for industrialization, one of the things that Kenyans will always prefer, including businessmen who run the country, when they are told to import maize, is when they prefer than having maize from the farmers and put a lot of money into their pocket so that they are able to do quite a number of things that can benefit the country as well as themselves and improve their livelihood. Having said that, a number of things needs to be put in place. One, as the PS has put it, it is time for Kenyans to capitalize on the opportunity they have now. That is the rain. Rain everywhere. In my village, Takaba has never had floods. Yesterday, the last 2 weeks, we have been handling issues regarding floods in Takaba, and we were trying to see how best we can help those people who have been displaced after having the severe effect of the drought, where they lost all their animals and they were IDPs, but now they got floods. So these are new phenomenon in terms of the climate changes that we are experiencing. And if then at one time rain comes like this, if you remember very well, our meteorology department projected that the rain will be very minimal. And all of a sudden, started pouring crazily as if it was going against them. That means it is not even easy to speculate the weather pattern. That has become a very difficult thing. And as the PS put it, is because of the global phenomenon. It's a challenge that every other country is facing. So basically, that is where we think we should focus on. Then number two, I think demonstrations and those other things don't bring food on the table of anyone, and doesn't reduce the cost of living. If we have already agreed to have a bipartisan discussion, although the bipartisan discussion is focused mainly on electoral reforms, which probably could be the main issue that each and every politician is trying to eager to fix it, we may not want to dwell on cost of living. The cost of living, I think, strategically, the way the government has focused, the way they have started thinking of issues related to fertilizers, reducing the cost of fertilizers, meanwhile trying to reduce the cost of unga, so that the people who are farming are able to eat as they continue make their products success. Therefore, I think in terms of cost of living, the best way to go is the way that has already been proposed by the president. And I think the best thing that we want to get best out of it is the issues of electoral reform, and let's see how the electoral reform will go into work. Even if people talk about this electoral reform, some of us know very well these electoral reforms, every other election, there's always electoral reforms. We don't have something which is cast on stone. I don't know when we will going to have a very independent electoral commission that is able to execute its mandate with no fear from either current government or the losers of the government or the opposition, the so-called opposition.
Okay, and we'll look at electoral reforms a little bit later.
Yes, now in terms of the counties and the doctors and medics' salary, I think it's unfortunate that if there were resources going to the counties, unless the Treasury has not released completely any resources, priority is to pay your workers, because the workers are the cornerstone of the process in which you can govern that county. If you don't pay them, I mean, these are, what do you want them to do? They have children, they have families, they need to feed them, and it's unfortunate that those governors who have not taken priority, who have not prioritized payment of their medics and any other workers in the county, it's unfortunate. And I think it is time for people to call for, I think there was a lot of discussion in regards to health and the county. Health is not something that we can compromise. And if it is something that we cannot compromise, then it calls for a drastic decision. I think the PS and the other government agencies should look at exactly how best can we provide health services. In UK, health is not provided by the counties. They also have counties. The health is provided by the national government. Essence is that we don't want to have a disconnect in management of patient. If you don't manage your patients very well, just imagine the people who work in the ICU and they have not got their salary for a month or two, and they go slow. What happens? We will lose all those patients, because those machines, life-supporting machines, will all collapse. And that will be losing life of Kenyans. And we can't gamble with Kenyans' life. Okay. I think the best thing is that governors should always prioritize paying their staffs. Then all other things come next, including the like of projects that they love to do, the development projects, and mainly is because of certain factors that is of interest to the governors. Okay, thank you.
And PS, looking at the current political environment that we are in, I would like to have a sneak peek on the role of manufacturing. I remember the last time I saw you in a public event, you were at the Athi River mining, where you promised that the government would construct an industrial park, which would also bring down the cost of materials that are used in building. Of course, enhancing the industrialization and also boosting the affordable housing project. I would like you to touch on that.
Thank you. I think let me put it in perspective. And Kenya, if you look at it regionally, within the Eastern Africa, we are doing a lot better in terms of manufacturing. So you can say almost without a doubt that after South Africa, we are the second largest manufacturing hub in between here, within the Eastern and Southern Africa. And so we are doing our best. But at the same time, we have to note that 80% of all the items we use are imported. So we are importing 80%, and we are making about 20%. Why? Because also as a country, as the Nigerians used to say, you blame the fork, but also blame the chicken for wandering too far. The Kenyans love foreign. So you'll find that if you give Kenyans an opportunity, they love foreign items. And so part of the challenge that we have is how do we get people that want to appreciate what they produce. The other issue that I also want to say is that at independence, government had this idea that government could do manufacturing, and I think we did that quite a bit. So if it is milk, we invested in KCC. If it is tea, we invested in some aspect of that. If it's pyrethrum, the government put up a factory. If it's paper, we had pan paper. And you know about the story of all the sugar factories, Chemiril, Muhoroni, Mumias, Nzoia. If you look at it, and we are approaching this from a very practical point of view, those factories played their role in terms of laying the foundation for manufacturing and employing our people at the time when we needed them. It is very, very clear that the role of government in industry is to be a good referee, is to provide the right environment for manufacturing. And if you look at it, where we have tried as government to do manufacturing, we don't have a very good story because a lot of our factories are going through a lot of stress. And so what is the future? And if you look at the world, the US or China, there's no country that has industrialized by having government build or involve itself in industrialization. So you go to the US, as huge as that economy, or Europe, there are no government factories. We only have private sector factories, because the role of government is to provide a level playing field. It's a referee that will allow everybody, create conducive factors that will allow people to do manufacturing. And so that is where we are focusing on the manufacturing environment. And also the way we are looking at the future of manufacturing is that it will be personal and small. I don't think that looking at Kenya, we are going to have huge factories employing 20,000 people. But the way other economies have come up is that you and me, you do macadamia, I do some tomato paste, another person will produce barbed wire, another one will produce nails, and all these people will be all over in the villages, so that we can do what we call Buy Kenya, Build Kenya. One of the things that we are promoting as government, because of what I said, Kenyans prefer foreign things, is that we are promoting government institutions by law are required to buy up to 30% of all their procurement on goods made in Kenya. And so in fact in my department, every quarter, all government agencies have to report on how they have complied with the 30% buying. So that's one of the things that we are doing. We have also put up a policy on local content. Local content means that, okay, we may not be able to make a full car or a full motorbike, but there are some things you can make here. Brake pads, batteries. So, for example, if you look at a motorbike, the way we are saying, if you import the whole motorbike, you pay an import duty of 25%. But for items that you source locally, it's 10%. So you can reduce your taxation by making your motorbike to have more of local content. These frames, carriers. So that's what most of these manufacturers are doing. And if you are importing a knife, for example, maybe you can import the metal part, but the wooden part you can make here in Kenya. That's what you're trying to say. So if you import a whole knife, then you pay 25% of duty. But the part that you import, if you're making, we have a lot of wood here, you can make the handle from here, then you reduce your taxation of even the metal part to 10%, and then you add the local. And that way you also then support other people that want to go into that space. And so we are having a very robust conversation in that space. And the two things that come to my mind that we are promoting, one is the idea of industrial parks. And industrial parks, this coming financial year, this government has put 4.7 billion. That's from the national government, and the county governments are putting another 4.7 billion, so nearly 10 billion. And the idea is that we are saying, for me and you, when people think of factories and manufacturing, they think big. You buy land, you build a factory, you buy a machine. We are saying not everybody can do that. So what we would like to do as government is to go to each of these counties. The county governments, we are partnering with them. They provide the land. We build sheds. Up to 100 meters square, 200, 1,000, depending on what you want. And then I can go and start to make nails in one of those sheds. Somebody can start to make macadamia. Another one can do avocado oil. Maybe I want to do milk processing. So the whole idea is that as a Kenyan who wants to go into manufacturing, you don't need to buy land, you don't need to build a factory. We are going to avail for you manufacturing space. And then we provide you common electricity is provided. So you don't need to bother about how electricity will come, water is provided, effluent management. And within those parks, we want even to bring in banking, we want to bring in KRA, if there are taxation issues, if you want to export, we can bring in customs. So that we make it easier. So this is a common manufacturing facility. So you come in here, you ask us to put your little factory and start to make what you want to make. And the electricity, the water, the internet, that's taken care of so that we can all go into that space.
Yes, I'm looking at a situation where this is something that is gonna rope in a lot of Kenyans and a lot of young people. And it's a noble gesture from the government. But looking at the industries that you've just mentioned, the factories that you've just mentioned earlier on, you could say that they are failed projects. What is the government, the Kenya Kwanza government, doing new from what the previous regime did with manufacturing? Because there are a lot of industries have sunk, and we do not have any signs of actually reviving them.
Actually that statement is wrong. The factories that have sunk are government factories. I come from Western Kenya. Mumias has failed. Njue is failing. But Kabaras Sugar is doing very well. West Kenya is doing very well. So what is happening, what is failing is government factories. I mean, look at cement. Simba Cement or National Cement has if you look at it, 4 factories. Their capacity over the last 2-3 years has more than doubled. Cement production, but what's happening to East African Portland Cement? It's closed because government was not set up to manufacture. If a spare part goes, if a factory breaks down, as government, I have to follow the procurement law. I have to advertise, I have to... It takes 3 months to get a spare part. That's not what Savannah Cement or Simba Cement. So if you think about it, if you look at that dichotomy, if you look at the sugar factories, for example, we have Ramis Sugar. It had died. It was a government project. But the private person took over, and it has done well. So what we are saying is, really what we are trying to say is government will play the role that it's good at playing. And our role is to be a referee. Okay? But in the past, we've tried to be both referee and player. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think we have failed as players.
All right.
So that's
and when we come back, we will touch on if at all we can privatize. I also work at the courts, and the case of Mumias Sugar and the privatization issue has dragged on, and there is a lot of back and forth. If at all we can decide to privatize these industries, can we maybe have a lasting solution where we have a player, and a referee as well? Hold the thought.
okay.
Indeed, you're watching KBC News Tech. Thank you indeed so much for making time. We have the PS for Industrialization, who is Honorable Juma Mukhwana, and also we have Dr. Isaack Hassan. They're taking a short break, but we'll be right back with more. I'm Bentroy. Njue, thank you indeed so much for keeping it KBC. We are looking at the state of the nation and a number of issues that have arisen in the last couple of days. And now joining us on set, we have the Honorable MP for Tigania West, Honorable John Mutunga. Honorable John Mutunga also is the National Assembly Agriculture Committee Chairperson. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Thank you very much.
And let me just throw you in the deep end. The rains are here. We had a deal that we can even go and farm in another country. That didn't quite go into fruition. Where are we exactly as a country?
Yes, we have the rains, all right. What matters is the levels of preparedness to make use of the resource, the rain, the water that is so plenty right now. Our time we've been talking about harnessing the surface runoff. Kenya gets a lot of water through rainfall, but it goes away, sweeps away our soil, and that's it. We need to invest a lot more in surface runoff harnessing, so that we can use this water for later on what is called supplementary irrigation. Supplementary irrigation is when crops cannot go all the way. They need a bit of water. And we lose our crop towards the end of the season because the intensity of the heat is so high, the water in the soil is low, so they wither out, and therefore most of the people ranges a zeal harvest. That's one of the things. The other one is that I don't think Kenya doesn't have land. We have sufficient amount of land to do a lot of work if we actually got sufficient water to irrigate. We look at Israel, they don't have better soils than we have.
Yes.
80% of Kenya is all right, arid and semi-arid. But it doesn't mean that arid and semi-arid land cannot be used for irrigation. And it doesn't mean that the land use, the economic use of the land right now is optimized. It is not optimized. There's a lot that we can do with the soils that we have. All we need is water. And there are two ways of getting enough water. One is to the stream water or the river water that comes from the mountains. We dam it. We do upstream damming. The Indian Ocean doesn't need our water. We can use those large dams, and the government, I think, has got serious investment plans in that direction. We have huge dams, about 500 or so, that are targeted to be done. The other one is harnessing surface runoff, which we have not done a lot. Kenya has an irrigation potential of more than 1 million acres. Directly, what we call natural potential is more than 580,000 hectares that you can irrigate without raising the water, without having to pump the water anywhere. Natural potential. But with a bit of adjustment, you can do more than 1 million acres. And there was an effort in Galana Kulalu which was targeting some ADC land for about 1 million acre irrigation scheme, which did not go very well. We need to plan well. We need to look at many parameters. If you look at the water that we were supposed to use, the other river water, is a lot more seasonal than permanent. And it also, there is a lot more that happens upstream on that particular water that needs to be looked into, so that we can probably do damming upstream, and then we do some kind of management of the water itself, so that we have sufficient amount, and then we regularize the use. And the investment in the irrigation itself needs to be better managed. I know we lost a bit of money there, but I think it is still, we should not lose hope. It is possible for us.
So as the agriculture chairperson at the National Assembly, you do still have hopes that the Galana Kulalu, if well managed, if well resourced, we can harness that and actually do away with the issue of insufficient food in the country?
Absolutely. We have the land in, I've been to Galana Kulalu personally, and the land there is fantastic. It's very good land. The soil is very good. It's very arable in the sense that it is deep soils which only need water. And of course a bit of management of the nutrition aspect of it. But let me tell you something. Galana Kulalu could be a major turnaround point for Kenya. If we use that land for appropriate we engage appropriate management of that land, we rationalize on the kind of work that we are going to do. And I want to tell you that there are investors who are interested in putting money into Galana Kulalu and then producing maize and selling to us. So the government just needs to open up and tell them, okay, come, let's have arrangements. Instead of thinking about land elsewhere, you see, there's something called food security. Food security, you are secure when you can lock up your own things. You're only food secure if you can make sure you grow food as much as it is possible. You can also buy. But when you go and invest in another country, and I'm not attacking anyone in this case, and you invest your money there and so on, and then you, supposing they say no, they're not allowing you to live with that food. You buy, so you double invest. I think it is important for us to look at food security in the context it is: the access to food, the cost of the food, the quality, the nutrition aspect of it. All those things need to be put together when we discuss food security. So production is one of the things we should not give up. We have huge potential in terms of labor supply.
Okay.
We have a lot of people who are not employed in Kenya, and agriculture is a major absorbing point for employment.
And I want you, Doc, to pick it from there, because he has talked about even the young men and women that we have a lot. The government wants to prioritize projects, and especially when it comes to food sufficiency. And the government has a monkey on its back, that is the Azimio demos. And they have said that after Ramadan, that the demos will continue. This is something that is going to affect government, just like we saw in the 2-3 weeks that there were mandamanos. I would like you to touch on that.
Right. First and foremost, I would like to slightly add some small point into the industrialization issue in the country, which is also part of the things that can change the whole landscape of employment and job creation. I think, as the PS put it, 80% is import, and it's only 20% that we actually export. That means it's not actually the Kenyans. He mentioned that Kenyans love foreign things. No, our policies are wrong. How are our policies wrong? In other countries, you are not allowed. You are not allowed to buy things from outside. And if you must buy, you will pay for it dearly. Taxation is high. If we increase taxation to all imports, Kenyans will going to love their own products. Number one. Number two, if we increase taxation and we know this will going to help, then we only need to educate Kenyans on what he has put it very well. Buy Kenya, build Kenya. Very simple, and they're going to do it. The other thing is, of course, encouraging foreign industries to establish their production plants in country. That will going to create job for our young people. We are able to get even their own product within our country at a cheaper price, and we are able to utilize our raw materials that are going into West. And sometimes we export our raw material outside, and it comes back to us with a hefty price. What do you call export processing? Zone is an example of that. Much of the suits we love and put on is actually produced here, taken out of this country, and it comes back with a brand name, and we buy and we talk about the brand. We could make our own brand and utilize our own products. And if they must go out of the country, when they are coming back, they should be very expensive. It's only Mheshimiwa and the PS perhaps who can buy at a particular time, and they have the choice of doing it. But I think
they opt for Kenyan products.
They opt for Kenyan product. Therefore, I think that is where we need to move a bit fast in terms of policy and ensure that those things are put in place. But in terms of farming and in terms of what is coming up, youth are misused always. I don't think if demonstration has ever benefited anyone in the society. In a proverb in my homeland, they say, a young man makes his parents cry whenever he goes for war. It's the only thing that makes parents cry. What happens? Your young man is misguided, he goes into the battlefield, he dies, and the parents remain with nothing other than crying and knowing nothing, in terms of what they can do next. So it is not a very good way to do. Picketing and demonstrations in a modern society, not our way, is always welcomed. And our constitution, 37, says that we are allowed to do demonstration and picketing. But the way we do it, how does someone leave his house and then pick weapons? And then he says he's demonstrating. In other countries, people demonstrate with placards, and they don't go into people's property. They go to the main centers in the cities and walk along the highways so that they are able to express their interests or their needs, whatever they want the government to action. But ours is totally different. If you look at our way of doing our demonstration, that I mentioned last time when we were here, that is hooliganism. Hooliganism is not demonstration, and I think this government should take a firm action. We don't want that. We want our youth to go back to our farms so that they make use of this period so that we are able to have a good production or good yield after the season is over. But now if we waste their time on here, people will be killed, properties will be destroyed. That will not be something that we're going to encourage. Let's leave it with Kina Mheshimiwa as they already proposed and make their own bipartisan discussion. We know there are a lot of brains who are in parliament, unless they don't want to use their brains. If they want to use their brains, they are able to guide us and lead this country to exactly issues that are being pointed out, and they can come with a solution. Having said that, what they are saying is, I mean, we are not saying there's nothing actually. There is a problem. Whatever they are saying, all of it is not something that is not acceptable. But the way they are doing it and the way they want to express their anger or the way they want things to be done, I think is not the right way.
All right. And they say they're going to start the Mandamanos after Ramadan. We're going to get to that. But the PS, earlier on, before we went for the break, we were talking about how we can resuscitate some of these industries that have fallen. They could provide a lot of jobs for the youth that do not have jobs in the industrial park, plus the Viwanda Mashinani. I'd like you to touch on that as well.
Thank you. Let me just step back to what Honorable Mutunga was saying. And one of the things that has, that's why when I find this debate of reduce the cost of living is a little bit difficult, because the maize, I come from a maize production area. The maize we have now, until after this rain, the fertilizer was 6,500. That's the fertilizer that I used to produce my maize. I have some maize. If you ask me, how do I reduce the cost? This is maize that I've already produced. So if you're demanding that I reduce the cost of my maize, when I bought a bag of fertilizer, 50 kilos for 6,500. But then we have a different challenge. Now that we have a lot of rain, the challenge that we run into is that, and because people have had a bit of suffering, what's going to happen? I was in Western Kenya about a week ago, and everybody's on the farm. So I see a bamba harvest, and then we create a different problem. You see what happens then is that once we overproduce, then we oversupply, and then we'll push, so then the demand will go down and the price will also go down. And then what it means is that when we all overproduce, then the price will be so low that we can't make the money we invested in to produce. In other words, we undermine profitability of that farming. And so what happens? So you end up with maize that you're selling below your production cost. You make a loss. And then what happens with that? The next year, the farmers will stop producing because they didn't make money. So part of what we are working on is to say, how do we mitigate that? And that's why we have a warehouse receipt authority, that now you can produce your maize, you don't have to sell it, you can store it with somebody until the price is good, waiting for good demand, because remember our production is seasonal. And so the issue that I'm trying to say here is production alone in the farm without linkages to processing, to manufacturing, will not work. So we need to add value to our produce, not just maize, not just macadamia, not just avocado, but we need clear linkages, and that's where the industrial parks come in. The other issue that I want to say here is in terms of import. Yes, already those of you who have been watching the last 1 week, we are doing public participation to put up something called import levy. And what we are saying is, yes, if you want to import, please import, but we will increase the duty on your imports. And we will use that levy to create what we are calling an industrialization fund. The same way that we have a CDF, the same way that you have a women fund, a youth fund, we want to create an industrialization fund, because industrialization is very expensive. And so what we want to say is that if you want to import something that we can produce locally, we will put duty there in such a manner that we collect that money that we are. So the more we import, the more we create a bigger industrialization fund. And if you want now to go into manufacturing and you want to buy machinery or you want to expand your manufacturing, there will be a fund that you can borrow from at lower level, 3%, 5% for 25 years. Remember, manufacturing is a long-term process, so that we can. So we already completed public participation on the import fund, import levy, that will then support the starting of an industrialization fund that will support Kenyans that want to go into manufacturing. The other issue that we also want to say is beyond the industrial parks, this financial year we've put 600 million, what we are calling Viwanda Mashinani.
Yes.
And the Viwanda Mashinani is a government grant.
More or less like a cottage industry?
The same. Once we build the industrial park, we don't want them to remain empty. So Mheshimiwa comes from Meru. So if we have an industrial park in Meru and you have a young person that wants to go into manufacturing of maybe Mirati or Mira juice, he can be given a grant of between 2 and 6 million, not alone. And he can buy a machinery and he can start to make that choice and start to market it. So the Viwanda Mashinani is this financial year, coming financial year, we are targeting 200 young people across the country. We will give you, so we will apply, we will advertise nationally, people will apply to say, I want to do maize in Soy, I want to do macadamia in Embu, I want to do Kamarapika in Karisa, I want to do meat production or maybe serum production in Isiolo, and we'll give you a grant to do that. So this is the idea of Viwanda Mashinani. And also on the same, this is a government grant, 600 million. We've also received an offer from Equity Bank that they are willing to put 250 billion
into that fund.
Into that fund for people that want to borrow for manufacturing. This is a specific fund, and we are very, very excited. Last thing I want to say about industrialization, this year alone, this is March, we've had very interesting engagements. I know that we had the Kenya-EU Business Forum at Radisson Blu, and we had nearly 500 investors that were here that want to start manufacturing. Not just in Kenya, you see the way Africa is working. If you know, Europe doing intra-European business, Europe to Europe, is about 70%. In fact, in other words, countries within Europe do business with each other up to 70%. Within Asia, they're doing it up to 45%. Within Africa, you'll be so surprised that Africans doing business with themselves is only 15%. But luckily, we have this thing called the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now, Africa is going to be a common market and a common area for us to trade. And we want to position Kenya as the launching pad into Africa. So that's how we are marketing it. And so part of why we have been attracting a lot of interest from Europe. We just had the AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce meeting about a week ago. That was at Ole Serene, and we had about 1,000 investors. Moderna is already here. They want to make vaccines for Africa. And that is so they want to take is that you can use Kenya as the gateway to Africa. And so we have a lot of interest from Chinese firms, we have interest from Indians. I know we have an Indian exhibition in November, the manufacturing coming to Kenya. And so, as I've said, our role as government is to provide the role of a referee, a conducive environment for manufacturing, both for young people, so as you can see we are supporting young people that want to go into manufacturing, but we'll also welcome large-scale manufacturers that come from either Europe, UK. We already, this week, you know that the American team is here for trade negotiations on a number of issues, apparels, textile, even Google and Microsoft. They all want to come here into Konza City to use Kenya as their regional office for Africa, and that is something that we are encouraging. So I think that for me the situation looks quite optimistic, and I think that what we are doing to ourselves, demonstrating, we are basically blocking our opportunities. I see that we are the focus. There is a stampede. There is a lot of interest. So I think what we are doing in this Maandamano is really sabotaging this opportunity. It's like somebody has seen that if you actually gave this government 5 years, you will not recognize Kenya. So we are actually trying to prevent Kenya from moving, because you can see the potential, you can see the interest, you can see that the way this president and the government is thinking is not the usual way. If you give President William Ruto 5 years, I see a lot of potential.
All right. As we give the government 5 years, Dr. Mutunga, the PS has mentioned that matters value addition could really help us in the agriculture sector. I would like you to touch on that.
Thank you very much. Yes, value addition is key, and especially in the agricultural sector. You see, right now, agriculture is still the major employer of Kenyans, even without so much of value addition. And I would like Kenyans to know that we are not really better than Uganda and Tanzania in terms of agri processing. They are ahead of us. You see, sometimes we say, Kenya, we are doing so well and we feel very comfortable about it. We are not. So we need to go back and ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? One of the things we need to do carefully is embrace this idea of warehouse receipting. We did a law on warehouse receipting, and the intentions were very clear that we would like to have people store their products before they sell, depending on the pricing regimes at that particular point in time. With warehouse receipting, it is possible for regional aggregation of products from the farm. And that regional aggregation stimulates for agro-processing. It is odd for a processor to be put in place to only go for 6 months. And then the rest of the 6 months is closed. You lay off people, the machines do not work, so they go rusty, and so many other things happen. So when an investor is coming to Kenya, they would like to know, or when a Kenyan wants to invest, they like to know that they will have raw materials throughout the year. And that is why warehouse receipting as a law is there today. Now, there are some disruptions that we need to be very careful about. And without appearing political, let me say that the Constitution is very clear when it comes to what picketing is. What we are doing here is not picketing. Picketing is physical and unarmed. And if you look at what happens in Kenya, it's really not picketing, it's hooliganism. And hooliganism is contested, I mean, it's a crime in this country. When police acts on crime, that is hooliganism, we see some offshoots and some outbursts that we shall go to the Hague. I think it is important for us to say that we should not threaten the system, the government and the security system of this country. They are called law enforcement. They are not called law requesting people. They are not supposed to request people.
They're supposed to enforce.
They are supposed to enforce law. Okay. And the IG should be left alone to do his work. Because I saw a video where somebody was actually challenging a policeman into combat. You see, this guy is in uniform, all right? He's a policeman. You look bigger than him. Why do you have to challenge him into combat? That's not picketing. That is hooliganism. That is trying to bully someone. All right. So if such a policeman takes a gun and shoots him, will you say that somebody has been murdered? All right. I think it is very wrong. So we need to do other things
that we are supposed as a country also to look into. But let's have a quick break. When we come back, we will wrap this conversation up. Thank you so much. All right, welcome back to KBC News Tech. Let's wrap this conversation. If you've just joined us, I have three guests. I have Dr. Mutunga, who is the Tigania West MP. I have Dr. Mukhwana, who is the PS for Industrialization. I have Dr. Isaack Hassan, who is a policy and governance expert. And before the break, we are looking at the state of the nation. And when it comes to food and agriculture, each and every Kenyan is touched. And before we went for the break, we were looking at how we can make value for whatever we have, and especially when we have the rains right here. And we are looking at the mandamanos. They cannot be quite good when we are at this situation. Looking at what the government has been able to do in the last couple of days, the maize flour is coming down. We have the government-to-government fuel deal that is supposed to bring down the cost of fuel and subsequently the cost of living. I would like you to touch on that. Should government be given time? Because they've talked about mandamanos after Ramadan.
I think first and foremost, we don't want to relate mandamano to Ramadan. Ramadan is a very holy month that we pray. I think that's why they say after Ramadan, we are so close to it. Yes. They have not respected it earlier on. We thank him for pronouncing, at least saying that the last 10 days we will wait. But the first 2 days of Ramadan is when mandamano began. And therefore, that is just a hypocritical way of putting things. Because if you really respect religion, if you really respect people who fast the whole day just because of their God, and the Kenyans are God-fearing nation, you wouldn't have actually done that maandamano. You would have waited until the Ramadan ends, and then you start Ramadan. We would have maybe joined him. But now, because he has spoiled it, our opposition leader, we may not join him anymore anytime soon. But the bottom line is that I think the government has come up with a very clear plan that indicates a hope of reducing the cost of living. Let's give them chance. I know if the fuel comes to the market, the intergovernment fuel agreement, and the fuel is already, I was told last week it was in Mombasa, and now soon it will be in the market, and the price of a liter of petrol becomes 100 shilling, production will also reduce in the industries. Electricity will reduce. A lot of things, a lot of goodies is in the horizon. I think the best thing for us at this point is to give the government of His Excellency Dr. William Ruto chance to showcase on how best he will going to work out on issues that have been raised. We understand. But the thing I don't understand is, I don't think if opening a server will going to help reduce the cost of living, because we don't understand how best that will go into. So let's use that as maybe issues related to electoral reform, and that has already been taken to parliament, and those parliamentarians will go into discuss. But in terms of common man's problem, cost of living issues related to common, cost of living, I think the president has taken the right direction with his team. Let's give him time, and we think also God has blessed it. We have got rain also, that also contributes higher. If the drought will have persisted, it will have been very difficult for this country to actually think of reducing any cost of living. Now we are having a lot of instability in the neighboring countries. Sudan has just popped up with civil, what do we call it, war, and that will going to have adverse effect on many things that this region would have benefited if there was peace. IDPs, refugees are not a very good thing, because they will have to go into the neighboring countries. They will have to utilize the same resources with the neighboring countries. There will be a lot of interest in that particular place. Insecurity will also occur in the host countries. So quite a number of things are going on. We pray for Sudan to have peace, but I think the bottom line is that for us to improve our economy, for us to improve the living standard of our Kenyans, and for us to cut the cost of living, let's give the government chance for a period, so that we are able to say we have given you significant duration that you will have fixed the issues of the historical issues that currently being referred to from the previous government. When you're given sufficient, like PS mentioned, we are dealing with the budget of the previous government, which is very true, because if you put a budget and you are not the one who is going to fund it, then it becomes difficult for you to fund it when you pick it in between there. So I think as from June, when the budget is put in place for 2023-2024, we expect a lot of changes, and we expect a lot of development projects to be shrinked for this country to actually pick up on basic things first. So that's basically what I will have said. Time is needed for the government to reflect on what they are doing, so that they can make a difference.
Indeed, and thank you for noting that the Sudan war is, of course, going to cause a ripple effect in the country. 3,000 Kenyans who live there are being evacuated. These are people who had jobs, had their businesses, and now they have to come back to the country.
Absolutely.
PS, I'm looking at the situation that we are in. We are just from COVID, drought, the recession. How do we promote our products? And we have very young people who have some very brilliant ideas.
Yes, I go across the country and I'm amazed by the things that Kenyans are able to do. I go to Karioko here, I see young people making beautiful bags, belts, shoes. So we have a lot of potential. One of the areas that we want to promote as a country is that we want young people in manufacturing, because I think that as a country, we actually don't lack money to manufacture. What we lack is that we have not prioritized manufacturing. If you see anybody putting up a 10-story building in Kiambu, that's somebody who can do a factory. But we have not prioritized it. So one of the things, and you see, manufacturing is really production, and it creates jobs. There is no country in the world that has developed without manufacturing. So you only become a developed world because you are able to manufacture, and a factory is the only place where you can employ 5,000 people. And as Kenyans, we want to promote that buy Kenyan, because every time you import something from outside, you actually export a job. So if the only way we can build Kenya is for us to be proud of our products, to be proud of what the young people are doing, and we're also asking Kenyans that have small amounts of money that we are going to make it easier for you to manufacture. You don't have to buy land, you don't have to build your factory. We'll build it for you. We'll provide you with electricity, with water. You as just to get the factory and get in. So want the young people to do that. About a month ago, I visited a young man in Bungoma who was doing milling of maize, and he's selling nearly 300,000 shillings a day. This is a 29-year-old, and in this country, we have created a situation where everybody wants to look for a job. I think that we can be more productive. So we want to encourage people that the only way we will resolve our issues of unemployment is for us really to focus on manufacturing, and we can start small. Don't think. I think in this country, when you think of manufacturing, people think of big things. They think of Mia's sugar. They think of a lot of money. We are saying we can go into small manufacturing and build it up. That's how everybody has built it. If you look at China 20 years ago, they were almost where we are. But focus. Now we are importing from them. We need to, and as I've said, government is now going to tax those imports in such a way that we make it unfavorable for you to import, so that we can promote our own young people that want to go into manufacturing. So my take is that I want to create at least 300 small manufacturers every year for the next 5 years across the country through this Viwanda Mashinani and also any other efforts that we can have, so that we really get ourselves into this manufacturing space.
And because I'm also very passionate about a lot of things that youth, I will be following you to check where we are, and especially when it comes to the Viwanda Mashinani, because I think that is quite a noble gesture from the government. Dr. Mutunga, finally, kindly wrap it up for us.
Thank you very much. The PS has spoken very well, and I would like to launch the issue of going across the country and initiating these local level manufacturing units. If you go to China, they do not have manufactured goods waiting in stores to be sold. They have an outlet, which is a display outlet, where you just pick what you want, and then you order the quantity that you want. Then on the back end, they go and manufacture that quantity for you in a record time. 1 week, 5 days, 4 days. That is what is ideal manufacturing in my very considered opinion. So when we get many Kenyans engaged in this kind of activity, then we are going to create even more jobs, and we are going to stimulate development at the very local level. The size of holding is really not an issue, but it becomes an issue when it comes to cost implications. But let's start somewhere where we know people have been engaged in it. And then we will be able to also structure out the raw materials. That's an issue that you need to consider very carefully. Because like, if I may be very specific on a agricultural system, we have not consolidated our production system in a way that we can guarantee a lot of raw materials over time. So even if you go to steel making, they must buy a lot of material to be waiting. That's one of the things that I think is really going to help us out if we have these industrial parks. On the other hand, there's something called investor confidence. And Maandamano does not go with investor confidence. It's like oil and water. Investors will basically be advised by their countries not to step into Kenya. Yeah. If you are likely to have your store raided and everybody walk away with whatever it is that your wares, then you will not risk, because most of the money is costly money. It's money that is probably secured from some source at a certain interest rate. On the other hand, Kenya has great opportunity at this particular point in time, especially in the context of selling within Africa. if we can open up that market, African market is quite large. What we need is to believe in our products. And that can happen if we as countries, because under the African Union, there is the NEPAD initiative, which basically brings African ends of states together to think through this. It can be permit from there to the people, and we can focus on buying our own national products to build our country, like buy Kenya, build Kenya. And we are not inferior in terms of producing some of these issues, some of these products. If you look at belts that are producing, the shoes that are producing, we're actually doing very well. All we need is to love our products as people. So I would like to tell Kenyans to actually like their products.
Okay.
It is important that we focus in that particular direction.
Thank you. Well said. I have been with three distinguished scholars, beginning from my immediate left, Dr. John Mutunga, who is the MP Tigania East and also the chairman
Tigania West.
I beg your pardon. Tigania West, and he is also the chairman of the Agriculture Committee at the National Assembly. Just next to him, we had Dr. Juma Mukhwana, who is the PS for Industrialization. Thank you so much for joining us. And just next to him, we have Dr. Isaack Hassan, who is a policy and governance expert, and also a medic. That is why you are so passionate about doctors not getting paid. But exactly, that's where we wrap it up. But the take home is that the youth should check out for what the government is doing in terms of industrialization, over 600 million in a fund that will be established in the next couple of months. And of course, the Viwanda Mashinani is a project that will be a game changer in the country, if you ask me. Remember, buy Kenya, build Kenya. That's where we put a cap on the state of the nation on this hour. On the second hour, we are looking at road traffic and more or less on the accidents part of it, because over 3,000 people die on our roads every year, and road accident has jumped all the way to the third leading cause of death in Kenya. I have the experts themselves. What are we not doing? That is a discussion we'll be having in the next 1 or 2 minutes. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having. The first time I'm having 3 doctors in my set. Thank you so much.
Have your number.
I think I have your number. Can I? Let me just call you. I think I have.